What's up, guys? It's the new sensation, Bigger Notation here, and today I'm coming with you for one of the first Star Wars gameplays for the new Star Wars Unlimited TCG that's come out recently. For those of you who have watched some of the recent videos or been keeping up with me in person at all, you'll know that I have been a massive fan of this card game since the release of it, and it's now been out for a couple of months. So I've been just grinding it, going to locals, which have got massive locals, really popular. Got a couple of mates who are getting into it as well. The gameplay is super fun. Even though it's a set one meta, the meta is super open. Like, you can play a lot of different decks and to a degree of success at least. And I'm just generally a massive fan of how the game works, especially with the way that the actions work, in the sense that you take an action, then your opponent takes an action, very similar to Legends of Runeterra, which is one of my favorite card games personally. So yeah, I'm just a really big fan of the game overall. I could go on about how good the game is for a very long time, but we'll dive straight into the gameplay. As you can see here, I'm on Han Green with a green 30 health base, so I'm choosing to play 30 health over the 25 health with ECL. The reason for that is just that there aren't too many good ECL targets in the Han deck that I'm playing, and the 5 health is super valuable, so I just decide to run the 30 health instead of the 25, and I'm against an Iden red with Tarkin Town. So as you can see, going into the matchup, I've got no turn 1 play unfortunately, and he's got a Viper Probe droid in which you can see 2 U-Wings, a home 1 and a resupply. So even though I don't have a turn 1 play, because Iden is the control in this matchup, the hand is very strong. I've got a lot of stuff once we get to the late game, because I know the game is going to go long. I've got an early ramp, and it's like the initial turn 1 play isn't going to be all too important there. So yeah, he's swung with the Viper Probe droid there, taking me down to 27 health. Let me know as well if this display for the base health is at all helpful for you guys in the comments. I was trying to figure out the best way to do it, because my opponent, he was using a damage counter that was off screen to keep track of his life, and I'm just using the Game Gnek tokens, which are pretty easy to see, I feel like, in person, but maybe over webcam they can be a little bit harder to, you know, tell the difference between some of the, maybe the 1s and the 5s, that sort of thing. So I figured this this kind of setup with the base health might be a little bit easier for you guys to see at least. So let me know about that. But again, I've just resupplied. I'm trying to get to early U-Wings as fast as I can and try and start swarming the board. And he's just, you know, hitting with the Viper Probe. He doesn't really need to play much else, because I imagine most of his hand is going to be removal spells anyways. And he's just waiting for me to play stuff. Here I do use the Han ability to ramp, which I then realize is a misplay, because I initially go for it because I'm planning to ramp and then flip and then ramp again with the attack and get a 7 mana U-Wing down. But I realized that if I go to flip here, he can just Power of the Dark Side my leader, and then, you know, I instantly lose my leader. And I don't get to 7, and I lose the fact that I have my flip available. And his flip is still not until next 2 turns down the line, because I've ramped and because I've got Han's ability available. So I have no real reason to flip right here. So even though I lost a card in hand, I end up just passing, I believe, because I don't really have anything to play with this 6. Because losing the leader is worse than losing the card in hand. So I think in hindsight I definitely shouldn't have ramped, at least until he tapped under 3 energy here, or 3 resource. But it was still definitely worth just holding the leader deploy, because now going into the next turn I can use my initial front side effect to ramp to 7, and then whether he's able to kill my leader before the swing or not, I'm still able to use U-Wing reinforcements, so I don't get as punished. So going into this next turn is really where this deck is going to start power spiking, with the fact that I'll have the ability to go up to 7 resource and start dropping U-Wings, or even potentially 8 resource with the deploy ability of Han, so that I can maybe drop some home 1s alongside that. And once you start going wide against these blue decks that are running, like, you know, aiming to do Vigilance for 6 and play for the late game, and running a lot of removal spells like the Iden red is, Once you start to go wide against them, it really reduces the power of cards like Power of the Dark Side. And also just the fact that you're able to play multiple units for the cost of one card is huge value, because none of their removal spells are also like drawing them cards, you know. The closest that they'll get to that is using an AoE removal spell, which will give them card advantage, but they don't really generate card advantage on their own, whereas a card like U-Wing generates you a lot of card advantage on your own. So cards like that are really how you'll get ahead of the Iden red players, or just like the Vader blue players, anyone that's trying to use Vigilance for 6 to mill you out and go to that super late game and win through deck out. So here you can see he drops a cell block guard after I use my ramp effect of Han, and then I decide to go for the U-Wing reinforcements. Again, the reason why I don't want to initially deploy and try and go for like a home 1 would be that he could potentially use Power of the Dark Side. In this case, he obviously can't do that because he tapped under the 3 by playing the Sentinel here. But he could use Entrenched on the Han if I did flip with the 2 that he's got remaining. So it's very unlikely that I'd get the home 1 established anyways. But also I feel like U-Wing is better just to allow me to go wide and allow me to get a bit more value for the 1 card. Home 1 only plays 1 unit out from the grave, whereas U-Wing reinforcements will play 3 units out. So I have a lot of options when it comes to like Power of the Dark Side targets, or I can swarm both ground and space because he's obviously only got ground units right now. So I have a lot more flexibility when it comes to the U-Wing reinforcements. So I'm able to pull out a Battlefield Marine, a Vanguard Ace with 3 experience tokens on, and a Millennium Falcon, which are all very nice targets off the U-Wing. Millennium Falcon especially nice because it gives me just an instant 3 damage on his base, effectively. And Vanguard Ace being a 4/4 off of the U-Wing for 2 mana is very efficient for sure. And now that I've got protection from Power of the Dark Side, and that he's tapped under the 3 that he'd need for it, I can flip into Han. I believe he's taken initiative already here, so we can just kind of play by ourselves effectively. But we swing the Millennium Falcon into base, I deploy the Han, but I don't believe I end up attacking with the Han, because if I attack into his Sentinel here, he can then just attack back with the Viper Pro for his first action next turn, and that will kill my Han. So I don't really have a need to attack with it. I want to force him to attack one of his units into it, because that'll use one of his actions, and then I can react by swinging the Battlefield Marine into the other unit to protect the Han, and then that forces him to use like a takedown or another removal spell from his hand to actually finish it off. But I still want to deploy the Han, because it's going to be a while before he gets to Super Laser Blast range, and there's not really much else that will kill it just off the bat, because takedown doesn't hit it, you know, Power of the Dark Side I can kill something else, Vanquish doesn't hit it, so Super Laser Blast is the only real card that I have to worry about killing it, and we still got 2 turns before that, so I can overextend for a little bit longer. And I just want to deploy it so that I have action economy, so that I'm not forced to take another action during my next turn to deploy it, where I might want to, you know, speed the game up a little bit and do something else, take a favourable trade here or there. But it also puts him in this weird point where I'm not going to attack my Han into the Sentinel, I'm going to try and force the Battlefield Marine into it. But if he trades one of his units in, then I have the ability to either trade the Han into the Sentinel if he takes out the Battlefield Marine, or I can take out the remaining unit if he's trying to take down Han. So yeah, I've got a lot of options here, just because I didn't give him the ability to trade back into the Han. And so here he deploys into Iden, and that's kind of, you know, pretty annoying, because I don't feel like Han has the best way to deal with shields in general, and he's also got the Sentinel to back it up. If I can pop that shield, then I can take a nice clean trade with Han, being a 4 attack unit, into the 4 health Iden. But he's going to start getting a lot of healing here off of the Iden. Luckily he's not, you know, too low on health, so he's not going to get huge value from it, but it does add a lot of extra value to the fact that he's removing my board. So I do end up taking the trade into the cell block guard, so that he can't, you know, take the favourable trades into Han, and then he's able to open fire down the Vanguard Ace. Arguably, I should have maybe swung the space units in first before taking the trade with the cell block guard. Actually, no, scratch that. I should definitely take that trade, because If I don't take the trade into the cell block guard there, then he can swing Iden into the battlefield marine, and then I lose the unit for the shield, and then he can swing the other 2 units into hand. So it's definitely worth me taking out the cell block guard there and then, even if I do lose the 4 damage in space for it. So yeah, here he's just open-fired my 4-4. I swing the Millennium Falcon to his base whilst I can, and then he powered the Dark Side's the Millennium Falcon, which obviously I'm going to choose the Millennium Falcon over the Han. And here I have the option again to use U-Wing if I want to, because we saw I had a second U-Wing in hand earlier with the Viper Probe, but I also have the Home 1 still in hand, and I could potentially swing Han into either his base or maybe the Viper Probe, and then drop the Home 1, and I think here I'm just checking my grave to see what I could potentially bring out, because again, he's cleared my space arena, but a nice thing to do against a deck like Iden Red, or again Vader Blue, any of these Vigilance tap 6 decks, is to try and flood both arenas as much as you can, because often they'll have a lot more of an issue dealing with space than ground, and that's why they'll often entrench some of your space units. I know against Boba, they'll often save entrenched for Fett's Fire Spray or that sort of thing, and that's why, or they'll just like burn their removal spells on their space units, and so because he's cleared most of my space units here, or all of my space units in this case, there's a possibility that I just drop Home 1 and try and flood space up again, because I've still got my leader in ground. And that's exactly what I end up doing. I swing the leader into the base. Again, I don't want to take the trade into the Viper Probe. I want to force him to trade into me, and use his actions to do that, because that could potentially mean I can play around that a bit easier, or take initiative where he might not want me to. And here it means that he takes the trade into the hand with the Viper Probe so that he can threaten Iden to swing at it. And that means that I'm then able to drop Home 1, play a Sentinel in ground off of it, and that means that he can no longer kill the Han again, so Han sticks around another turn. And this is all because I'm not taking trades with Han, because I know that if I take trades with Han, it effectively puts him in action up, because he wants to be trading into Han, he wants to be clearing my board. And so if he wants to be clearing my board, I shouldn't be letting him damage my units, or I shouldn't be damaging my own units for him where he wants to take these favourable trades. And so, yeah, just letting him call the shots on what he wants to remove, rather than forcing anything on my end, and mainly just targeting his base is definitely the way to play against these decks. It's very important to bear in mind that sort of action economy in that sense as well. And so here he's going to vanquish the Home 1, which makes a lot of sense. You know, Home 1 is a pretty big unit, and again, he's not got a lot of space units or ways to deal with space. And so he's gonna be focusing down the space units that I play much more, because they're much easier for me to swing into base. Whereas in ground he might have some more Sentinels, or just units to contest like his leader. And I follow up with swinging the Sentinel into his base, because I know that him swinging Iden into the Sentinel is going to be a hugely favourable trade for him. He kills a 4-3 effectively for free because of the shield. So I want to get value from that 4-3 whilst I still can. And I know that he can't use like takedown on Han or anything like that, and it's also not very important for me to get the ramp off of Han this turn, and because Han and the Sentinel do the same amount of damage, there's no real reason why I shouldn't swing with the Sentinel first, and that's because I've already reached 8 resources, so I can play Home 1, I can play U-Wing, I can play all of my top end in the deck, and those are the 2 most important cards into this kind of matchup, because again, like I mentioned earlier, they play multiple cards for the cost of 1. And so here, like I say, he wants to take that favourable trade into the Sentinel, and he does that. But I've already got the 4 damage off of it, and I've already protected Han from it, so I'm very happy with that. And here, I think I was considering swinging Han into his leader, but I end up swinging it into his base. And I think that's because, again, I know that he'll want to swing into the Han eventually, and also I have the follow-up of the actual Han Solo unit to take out his leader. And that means that I don't have to lose my leader unit. So a lot of this game has just been me playing around the favourable trades that I know he's wanting to make, and not letting him take down my leader at all. And yeah, basically just protecting my leader for as long as possible, getting huge value off of it, and forcing him to play really awkwardly around the actions that I'm taking, because I'm just making sure that I'm effectively 1 action ahead of him by not swinging into his units. And here I'm in a very, very strong spot. Even if he uses Super Laser Blast, again, we saw that I had the second U-Wing still in hand. And I think by this point I've also drawn a second home 1, if I remember correctly. So even if he does drop Super Laser Blast, which is kind of the best way for him to clear this board off, other than maybe like a Vanquish and a Power of the Dark Side, I am then able to follow up with another board flood in the sense with the use of either home 1 or U-Wing. And he drops the Palpatine, which is a very nice way to deal with the Han unit. But the issue with it is it does tap him out, and so here I'm kind of able to do whatever I want. I do need to obviously still bear in mind that Super Laser Blast is a card, and therefore I can't overextend into the board. But if I have enough follow-up to where Super Laser Blast isn't really that impactful, even if I do overextend, then it's less scary as a threat. And it also means, because he's tapped out, that I'm guaranteed to get this 4 damage through with Han later on in the turn. Because his only real action from this point out is to heal one off of his leader. I do kind of want to kill this Palpatine, because of the fact that it can trade into my Han and get it, and then obviously leave the Palpatine alive. But by this point, I'm also looking at his base health and thinking, after I swing with Han and he heals 1, he's going to be at 9 health. If I can force through a little bit, I've got like surprise strikes to potentially finish off. So effectively he's kind of going towards 6 health if I can find a surprise strike. And at that point, it's like, even if I do overextend a little bit with the U-Wing reinforcements into a Super Laser Blast, because I've got the follow-up, I believe I have a follow-up of a second home 1 in hand by this point. But even if I can just force like one of these units' attacks through, then I'm going to start threatening lethal with pretty much every attack. And that's really where we want to be at. And again, I find a Sentinel to protect the Han leader, which is again huge, because it means he can't instantly trade his Palpatine into the Han to get the value from that. He has to go through this Sentinel first. And whilst the Sentinel isn't necessarily more valuable than the Han at this point, because the extra ramp isn't doing all that much for me, it's just the fact that, you know, this one card has been able to stick around for so long, and that's really where the value of it comes from. Even if it is effectively just a 4-attack vanilla at this point, like, the fact that I've been able to protect it for so long, and occasionally the extra ramp has come up for me. Enough that it has generated a lot of value and a lot of damage on his base. And again, we've been able to see the Vanguard Ace, which is another great card to hit off the U-Wing, because again, he's got no space units right now, and he has been struggling with space for pretty much the entire game. Most of the removal spells that have come down have been on the space units that I've been playing. So we see a tap 5 here for a bombing run, which is, to be fair, a very huge play on his end. And something that I potentially should have played around when choosing my U-Wing reinforcement targets, because I did have some other options that I could have taken in this particular choice. And it clears my entire ground arena because they're all on 3 health, which is definitely not a card that I even thought about when I was going for that. It's not a card that I was attempting to play around at all, so definitely should have been one that I thought about. And it does also now leave him with 4 mana open to potentially take down my last unit here, or wait and see what I play with my turn, and maybe react to that a little bit more. The issue being that he can potentially, you know, clear this Vanguard Ace off the board, and then if my hand is mainly ground units, which this deck does mainly run ground units as well, the hand green deck, he's then going to be able to trade into those with Palpatine. So this is, if any, his best sort of time to stabilize, and you can see here he does end up taking down the Vanguard Ace, which makes a lot of sense, because you know, he's threatening this Palpatine as another way to remove any ground units I play. But I did get some nice damage through with the Vanguard Ace there. 4 damage onto the base, again, is going to be great. And here we're able to tap 8 for the home 1, and I believe I end up playing the Millennium Falcon off of it. Because, again, like I say, we're looking to threaten lethal at this point. He's on 5 health. I can take him to 2 with the Millennium Falcon, and then pretty much any swing that I can establish is going to be lethal threatening. And this is also going to put him in the position of, he has to take initiative now, because otherwise, if he doesn't, I don't swing with Millennium Falcon, and I can just swing with home 1 next turn for game. But if he takes initiative, first of all, he's not healing. which is what he needs to start doing to start getting out of range of these potential lethal threats. But he's also not got any way to deal with these space units because his one unit isn't ground. Yeah, if going into next turn, I'll take him down to 2 health if he does take initiative, which he kind of has to. If he doesn't have a way to clear both of these units going into the next turn, then that's just going to be instant GG because both of these units will threaten lethal. And the only real way to do that would be a super laser blast, which I'd then be able to try and re-establish some board off with as well. And again, I'd just be putting him in that same position of he has to keep drawing super laser blasts to be able to live, and he's not able to heal because as soon as I can take initiative, I can win the game. So, you know, eventually he'll run out of super laser blasts, even if he manages to draw all 3 copies in a row. It just doesn't really matter by that point. And so because we've got him in that position, I believe this is where the game ends up finishing up. I pay 1 for the Millennium Falcon to keep it sticking around, just so that it can threaten that potential lethal and he doesn't just like vanquish off the home 1, and then I'm an action behind because I'd have to play the Millennium Falcon and then he can potentially remove it before I can swing. And so because I've kept that Millennium Falcon around, I believe he ends up just conceding the game by this point. So we take the game there, fortunately. Game 1 against Iden Red. I don't think I mentioned at the start of the video, but these games are basically part of a Star Wars League that has been starting up in the UK community Discord. And so they're all going to be best of 3 games, so I'll have game 2 posted, hopefully very soon. And I'm going to be recording all of my games throughout my journey through the league. So if you guys are interested in more Star Wars Unlimited content, then definitely stay tuned. Hit a little subscribe if you can. Hit a little like on the video maybe. I'm also hoping to record some games at my in-person local so we can get variety between like webcam games, tabletop simulator, and actual in-person games. Because I'm really invested in this game. I think it's a super amazing game. So yeah, hope you guys enjoyed the video, and we'll catch you guys in the next one.